Hi, I'm Ian and welcome to Executive Grooves. Now, today is going to be a little bit different because we're going to turn things on their head. I'm not going to be interviewing my guest. One of my previous guests is going to interview me. And I've asked Rachel Winters, who is an actress from the Royal Shakespeare Company at Stratford-on-Avon, to interview me about my career. Without further ado, let's hear me.
Hello, Ian. How are you?
I am very well. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So we're mixing things up a bit in this episode, and I'm going to ask you the questions. Let me know at any point if it feels scary, and we can stop.
That's what my dentist says to me.
Oh, yeah, very good, very good.
Yes.
Okay, well, the first question. Can you start by giving me a brief, if you can, overview of your career?
When I was at school, I probably was very bored at school. I didn't really want to be there, and I'm sure the feeling was kind of mutual. Um, Although I did play sport in those days, so I was the stalwart of the rugby team and the cricket team and the hockey team. And I had access to the music room, which was fantastic. So great school time, apart from the academic stuff, which I don't really remember at all. But then I went on, I took a very early job when I was literally about 15, and I made meat pies for the cross-channel ferries. So that got me into the world of work, and I've always had a work ethic. I work hard, I try and do multiple jobs, so I keep my interest. So that started me off, and then I had a lucky break because the school's sports master obviously liked me. He took me aside and he gave what I would now regard as coaching and said, "You're the sort of person that engineering companies would like to sponsor through university. Why don't you write off and see if they'll sponsor you?" So I did write off. I wrote off to Rolls-Royce, Ford and London Transport. And lo and behold, all three came back with offers to pay me to go to university.
Amazing.
What's not to like? So I did choose London Transport. A, because I wanted to go to London, the bright lights, the nightlife, etc. But also they had a management philosophy which I quite liked. They were recruiting you to be quite a senior person in due course, many years down the line. And what they insisted you do is you learn every job that would be working for you. So fixing buses, fixing trains, lifts and escalators, going out clearing drainage on the tracks, but also driving buses and driving tube trains, which was fantastic as a sort of 18, 19-year-old. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So I went to university and I ended up with London Transport designing trains, which got me into telecoms and data and all those techie things. And then I saw Busby adverts, British Telecom were being privatised and you could go and join them and you could have shares. So I did, and I ended up working for them running their special services function in central London. Special services in those days was a fancy title for digital. Most people can remember that telecom lines is just a pair of copper wires. Now we're having fibre optics and you can do all sorts of clever things with that. So I ran that service, and then I got seduced again with the offer of a job with Cable and Wireless, who were the competitor. That was an interesting process, going from British Telecom to a competitor. So I went to Cable and Wireless, and within a couple of years, we were running a division, and we had the opportunity, five of us, to do a management buyout of the business. Five of us, and I was the IT director at the time. I didn't know what a management buyout was. I was focusing on the technical aspects of running a very, very large telecoms business. So we bought the business, 1,300 people, about 380 million turnover back in 1994, so probably bigger numbers now. And we ran it for a couple of years, and then we ended up with an agreement to pass the business over to Siemens. German company. And I did a spell with Siemens, working initially in their outsourcing division and then running some of their larger transformational contracts like the Passport Office, National Savings, Barclays Bank, Barclaycard, and finally the BBC. More latterly, I've been focused on actually consulting with many smaller businesses rather than larger businesses, and culminating in earlier this year, I decided time was come to retire and focus on my interests of non-executive directorships. So I am a trustee director of Northamptonshire Mind, which is a mental health charity, trustee of Trilogy Active, which is a leisure company, and I do also support other local firms that I have been involved with through my career. So that, in a nutshell, is my career, and looking back, it is quite a journey. I'm immensely proud of what I've achieved, but also very, very grateful for the opportunities that came along, and hopefully I made the most of them.
It's amazing listening to all of that. Like, it's so diverse, and I feel like you've been on this massive journey as well. Yeah, it's like incredible. And with that, so you've also had this incredible 48-year run in senior leadership, right?
Mm.
And I'm thinking, I know because we know each other a bit, that there are some good stories. There are some good stories, and I feel like I've heard like a tiny percent of those stories. I was wondering if you could tell me what's one of the, I don't know, like weirdest or unexpected moments that has really stayed with you, if you can pick one.
Thank you for that. Yes, there are a lot. I remember one of our employees was appeared on the evening news streaking naked across the back of a hotel opening ceremony.
No.
There are many like that, and when you're managing people, not everything goes according to plan. But the one I'll pick on is the scariest. Probably is I was out on a tube train, and there is a tube train that runs around the London Underground every night, called the gauging train. There are other trains called the Hoover train, which do what you'd expect, maybe filling up the bag with things you might not expect, but that's another story. The gauging train is looking for where there are pieces of the infrastructure, brackets, signals, or something that have come loose and are fouling the area that the train would occupy in the tunnel. So you are looking for relatively small things, and there are little metal fingers that you use bolted around the train that detect these infringements. So there we were one day going along quite happily, having our cup of cocoa. It would have been about 2 o'clock in the morning. It was very cold, even underground. Having just come in from the tunnels, this was at Queensway. So we'd come into the tunnel at White City, driving along quite happily. You don't really expect anything is going to happen. When we do this every night, you get used to the fact that the most exciting thing that's happened on the whole night is you couldn't undo one of the wing nuts or something. On this particular occasion, we were standing there watching all these fingers along the train, and then we realised that the tunnel wall ahead of us was progressively demolishing the entire wooden structure that these fingers were mounted on. And the driver applied an emergency brake, and we stopped just in the nick of time before it had done too much damage, and realised that the tunnel itself had actually rolled to the side, and the train's in the middle of it, and it's got partly in a bit that's rolled to the side and partly in the bit that's stable. So we weren't expecting that, and it took a little bit of sorting out. And the worst aspect of this is I missed my breakfast the following day. Now, anybody that knows me will know how big an issue that is.
Oh dear.
But when we did find out what had happened, these old tunnels, unlike new tunnels which are drilled out in a circular shape, old tunnels were dug out by people with spades. And the void, if you like, is much bigger than the tunnel. So you put the cast iron tunnel segments in, and you put a steel rope round with a peg each side to hold them in place. Well, over 150 years, the steel goes rusty, cable disintegrates, tunnel is free to roll.
You very casually, I remember you very casually dropped into conversation once that you toured with Cliff Richard. Amazing. Can you tell us the story? What happened? But also, what did being around a creative team teach you that you maybe couldn't learn in a boardroom?
Ooh, wow, that's multiple questions. Well,
Yeah, yeah,
so,
sorry. There's lots of stages there.
so yes, it is a true story. So let's cover the story first.
Yeah.
So this all dated back from when I was at university in London, and you've probably got the impression now that day-to-day life, studying academic stuff wasn't really for me, even though I got a very good degree. I got bored and I did all sorts of other things, and it included setting up the student union in a relatively new university called the City University and Business School in London, down in the Barbican. And that included setting up the Real Ale Society, again, another one of my favourites, the
Great.
Lunch Club, and also the Evening Music Club. And we did a lot of the work ourselves in terms of the sound system. We hired in bits and pieces, but we basically set it up. And I got quite interested in sound systems, and I always have been since then. But as my interest grew, I got more and more into the community around sound system, and I did some weekend work initially with a sound company called Springtide Sounds. Strange how you remember all these small details, and they were based out of a building behind a recording studio over in Bayswater, where a number of artists were recording. One I remember in particular was Adrian Snell, who was apparently Princess Diana's favourite artist. And I realised that this company basically supported Christian music artists at the time, one of whom was Cliff Richard. So when the chance came to go out and support the sound company doing his tour, I jumped at the chance, and my career, my studying, my degree all took a little bit of a backward step, and we ended up going out and touring mainly around the south of England, London, and hugely different to what I've subsequently described, learned about corporate life on the road, but also in terms of delivering a performance, delivering that experience for the audience. The amount of work that goes into it, everything is prepared, everything was sound checked, every bit was choreographed. As the sound company, we knew exactly what we had to do, and we were put through our paces, not only in terms of delivering that, but what happens if and when, and it is more when than if, things go wrong.
Yeah.
What happens if something fails on the stage, a microphone or a particular part of the sound system. So the amount of preparation, the professionalism is definitely one thing I will remember from that.
While we're talking about music, what's remind me of the story about you in a piano bar somewhere again.
I found this place called the Baby Grand Piano Bar over near Charing Cross, and The food was excellent. Again, those people that know me know that food's quite an important element. So I went in there for the food, but they did have a grand piano. And one of the nights that I was in there, the guy who normally plays wasn't there for some, I can't remember the reason. So I put my hand up and said, I'll have a go. So I did.
Love that.
And that led on to a few events there, one of which I played along with the Glasgow Rangers supporters. So I played there. I remember we did Piano Man, sung not very tunefully on the part of the singers, probably 10 times longer than the original record. And we went round and round, and Davey at the bar and all that sort of stuff. That was great. And also, we had the cast of the musical in the adjacent theatre, King's Theatre, which was the Rocky Horror Show. And I can tell you there were some people there that were dressed in very uncorporate, business-like outfits.
I can imagine.
If you know, you know. One of whom was Paul from S Club, sadly no longer with us. But at that time he was in the show, and he came in, and I recognised him because my kids both grew up with S Club 7. I recognised him. So whatever it was I was playing, I decided to segue or merge into Never Had a Dream Come True by S Club 7.
I love that you were like playing something else, and then he came in, and not only were you like, I recognize him, I know who he is, but you were able to think of an S Club tune and then just segue into that. That's brilliant. But just my last question, can you talk about the time that you were caught speeding on the tube?
There was a reason. It's one of these stories, along with the tube train was too big for the tunnel. True. I was working with the aerodynamic test team, and we were running some tests on a new train. And the reason aerodynamics are important in London transport, particularly on the tubes, is they're not high-speed trains that have to be aerodynamically efficient. In fact, the very opposite. They have to have flat fronts because they're basically like a piston that's pushing air through the tube system in order that people have reasonably fresh air to breathe. But to test that, by nature of testing, you go outside of the normal envelope of operating performance. So on this particular occasion, which was a wet, cold day, we were up near Rickmansworth, and we were pushing the train. We had every motor going as fast as it could. We were going downhill, and when we saw the signal in the distance, the said to the driver, begin to brake. He pulled the brake on, and what happened was he instantly locked all the wheels. So there we were, above the speed limit, wheels locked up, and it became an ice skating contest. We literally slid along the rails, past the red signal, which is on a test track, so it's okay. But it is adjacent to the station at Rickmansworth. As we gracefully entered the station, we realised that that particular day the local mayor was opening some new part of the building, a new flower garden or something, and had a party of people on the station platform.
Amazing. I forgot about the bit about the mayor being there, actually. That's a little nugget to that story.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much, Ian. It's lovely chatting to you as always.
Well, thank you, and good to see you as ever. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly found it interesting being on the other side of the interview and having somebody asking me questions. And it's taken us into areas that I probably wouldn't cover as part of a normal interview or podcast, which is great. And Rachel's really good, and I like working with Rachel because she's obviously picked up things that I've said in previous discussions, chats, or networking events that she wanted to push a little bit further. And of course, if you want to ask me about any of those things or any aspects of my career, feel free. I'm around and about, happy to have those discussions. If you've got any suggestions for other people I could interview on my Executive Grooves podcast, just let me know. I'll do the rest. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it.